This is Because We Care. Brought to you today as a public service of WSFJ. Through this program, we want to help make you more aware of our community. Interesting people, special guests, special groups, and agencies.
WSFJ brings you Because We Care as a community service. We realize that in Central Ohio there are many services, volunteer agencies, and human interest stories which would be helpful to you if you knew about them. So WSFJ is here each weekday with a program which will introduce you to friends and neighbors across Central Ohio with special information which we believe is pertinent to your life.
Because We Care will lift your spirits, change your perspective, or at least give you something to think about. Now with our guest, here is Jean Rodabaugh.
Welcome to Because We Care again. City folks may be confused about what is happening on the farm scene. Maybe some farm folks are too. Much of what we hear and read is not always encouraging. No doubt about it, times are changing. Did we think that with the innovation of modern technology and scientific advancements that the countryside would not change? Just as a tractor replaced the horse, so are modern methods influencing the farm. Production, management, marketing, and profits. Dr. Allan Lyons, Ohio State University Department of Agricultural Economics and Rural Sociology, is going to put this into perspective for us. Welcome to Because We Care, Dr. Lyons.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Why agricultural economics and rural sociology for you?
Well, it's difficult to explain, but I think it's basically a result of the fact that I wanted, as a youngster, in the worst way, to be a farmer, and somebody got to me in my educational career and demonstrated and showed me the infeasibility of trying to establish myself as a farmer when I did not have any equity capital to begin that process. And with that realization, then saying to myself, I would like to be an educator to help other young people in the process of adjusting themselves out of the farming business.
And now you're in a position to help a lot of those farmers, aren't you?
Well, I hope so.
Is it time for a new definition of farming or farms?
There is a new definition, to be sure, but it depends on where you're coming from when you decide to define the farm business. Are we trying to define the farm business as a place to raise a family, as a place to have a particular lifestyle, or are we looking at the farm as a business, a place to produce food and make a profit? And it's that adjustment, making that change in definition, that's causing a lot of the agony that we see in the rural countryside today. There is a need for a new definition in most people's minds. And that new definition means changing it from a way of living to a way of producing food and making a profit.
Well, there is a business aspect to farming, regardless of what level you're on, whether you're doing it on a very small family basis or whether you're doing it on a large basis, isn't there?
Yes, there is. If I interpret your question correctly, there is a difference in the way you account for dollars and account for inputs into the farm business, as whether you are doing it as a part-time farm or a small family farm or a very large business which borrows a lot of money. Do we charge the farm business for the labor that the children put in as part of the family? Or is that simply a way for the family to teach their children how to work properly and develop good work habits? Depending upon how you view that, you're going to look at the farm business differently.
Are these changes bad, per se?
The changes that are occurring are changes that are going to ensure that the American people continue to be the best fed people in the world. They are the good or bad, they are changes that are happening changes that are necessary in light of today's world. We cannot continue to expect our farm businesses not to change when in fact the rest of the world around us is changing. There aren't many rural housewives at this point left that really want to go out and milk a cow every morning and tend the garden and do all the canning. Rural people, farmers, want to live like urban people. And to do that, the farm business needs to change.
Change brings apprehension, but there are some things that have not changed.
Oh, yes. There are many things that haven't changed. And in a course that I teach, I start the students out by reading a book that was written close to 2,000 years ago, and it's called Roman Farm Management. And in that book are the economic principles underlying the farm business and essentially the economic principles that underlie any good business. Those principles don't change. The definition of profit doesn't change. The acceptance and recognition of how to accommodate a business for fixed costs and variable costs needing to be covered, those kinds of things don't change. What changes is the environment in which these principles operate, and that's what's changing around us now. Around the farm business, it's the economic environment within which these principles of good business management operate. And it's that environmental change, the economic environmental change, that is of concern to a lot of people.
So you're saying that the principles of good management and marketing or whatever have not changed. It's just the application of them, how we apply them.
It really is. It's how we apply those principles in light of the economic conditions that exist.
I find that very fascinating that you go back to centuries ago to these very principles, and they applied then and they apply now.
Sure. They are the same principles. They're unchanging, and our grandfathers and their grandfathers, if they were trying to make a living, make an economic living from their farm business, needed to apply the same principles. Profit equals receipts minus costs. That does not change.
You can't spend more than you have.
Right. But what changes, of course, is the environment that causes the receipt side to change or the cost side to change. And it's the good manager that recognizes those changes and changes the business accordingly that will survive over time.
Is this just the beginning of change?
No, it's not the beginning. It's a continuum. We're just continuing that process of change. And the way I like to express it is it's the current situation where we hear a lot about the agonizing situation that a lot of farmers are in, and they certainly are. It's just another inning in the ball game. The ball game continues, and it will continue, and this is simply another inning of change. And the last major change, if you want to look at a major change, you can say there was a major change in the decade of the 70s, when in fact we were coming out of 2 decades of a very kind of a stagnant agriculture where things were pretty smooth, not a lot of money being made, but people were surviving. And then there was a big change in the 70s where all of a sudden there was a lot of money to be made in agriculture because we were expanding our foreign markets, which resulted in increasing prices in the United States for most grain farmers in particular. And that was a big change they had to adjust to. And they adjusted to that by trying to capture, if you will, the profits that were there to be made. And now we're in another change, where the change is saying there are fewer profits to be made. Now we must adjust our management style to that decreased income that's being offered to farmers by the marketplace.
Can we talk a little bit about marketing?
Sure.
Now, this is an important facet, then, of farming, is the marketing, the
Right.
ability to market.
If you talk about marketing, first of all, you have to decide which group of farmers you're talking about. If you talk about dairy farmers, the farmers themselves don't do much of their own marketing. They go through co-ops, and co-ops do the marketing for them. The farmers support that marketing, but it's not an individual farm decision. When do I sell my product? Because that has to move out of the barn every day or every other day. And if you move to the grain farmers, the hog farmers, the beef farmers, where that marketing decision can be made by the farmer. Do I sell today? Do I hold it a week? Do I hold my grain 3 months, 6 months, maybe a year? And it becomes very important that the individual who is trying to make a living from selling a product that he or she has control over the marketing of, that individual needs to know what it means to have access to and understand markets. When are markets expected to go up? What causes markets to go up? What caused markets to come down? And right now we're in a period where grain prices seem to be on a general decline. Now what's causing that problem?
He needs to know that.
The farmer needs to know that to be able to make adjustments in the business.
All right. Now, where does he go to find that out?
There are a lot of places to go to find out about marketing, to learn proper marketing techniques. There are many meetings held throughout this state and across the Midwest by the colleges of agriculture, the extension services. Many meetings are put on by grain marketing firms to help farmers understand how and when to best market their crop.
Is it necessary for the farmer to market his own crop, his own grain, cattle, whatever? Now, you said the dairy farmer goes through a co-op, but is this the other farmer's responsibility then?
Pretty much so. It's an independent marketing situation yet for most farmers. They must decide when they are going to transfer title of that product to someone else. They have a lot of different options. They can sell it right out of the field, right out of the pen, the hogs, but with the hogs or the cattle, they have time because the pig doesn't have to go to market today and the grain doesn't have to like the milk does. So we've got a situation where the individual farmer must decide, when am I going to sell that product? Are the prices down today, and do I expect them to go up next week or 3 months from now? Do I hold that product? It's a big decision, and it's an important decision. There can be as much as $1 per bushel of corn sold just based upon when the farmer decides to sell the product.
That's a rough one, isn't it?
It sure is. It can mean the difference between success and failure.
And it almost comes down, I know there's scientific ways and economic ways to do this, but it almost comes down to where you feel as if you're in a big guessing game.
If you're not educating yourself to the market, there are tools to help an individual try to understand what is expected in the future as far as markets are concerned. There is a lot of guessing, but the educated guesser, if you will probably come out with a better marketing strategy than someone who simply sits back and says, well, today I need $100 to pay something, therefore I must sell some grain. And $100 is small. They're probably thinking in terms of needing $10,000 or $20,000 to make a payment at a bank.
I need to take a break. Would you believe that? We have to take a break. We'll be right back. Yes, we will.
Here's the sower, Michael Guido of Meta, Georgia, with a seed for the garden of your heart.
Darling, said a young bride, I baked a sponge cake for you. Great, he replied, let's eat it. You won't like it, she said. I got the wrong kind of sponges. No, I don't expect to find sponges and sponge cake, or horses and horseradish, or angels and angel food cake. But I do expect to find Christ in Christians. Unfortunately, some tried to embrace Christianity without Christ. It's Christ and only Christ who makes a Christian, not a person, not a place, not a performance, and not a payment. The Bible says, as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God.
A Seed from the Sower has originated from the studios of the Guido Evangelistic Association, Meta, Georgia.
Welcome back. Dr. Allan Lyons, Ohio State University Department of Agricultural Economics and Rural Sociology, and I are talking about farm economics. What else? Dr. Lyons, what other changes do you see coming about in the 80s?
I think the rest of this decade will pretty much continue what we've started. And I characterize the decade of the 80s as a decade of deflation in agriculture. And that simply means that the assets that farmers have will the value of those assets will probably continue to decline for a number of years. And whether it will be another 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years is, you just can't put your finger on it. But what we are seeing across the country, across the agricultural enterprises, is a reduction in income. And those reductions in income will result in a reduced value of assets. In other words, the price of land will continue to go down, the price of buildings that farmers own, the price of livestock that they own will continue to go down, which will mean a couple of things. One, the reduced income will result in farmers needing to pay off during the next few years debt that they now have, and probably do everything they can to not incur new debt.
Are you sort of saying sort of a backing off sort of thing?
A backing off in terms of the amount of money farmers have borrowed if they are going to survive over time. One of the keys to success in agriculture in the near future will be words like equity capital, money that you don't have to pay interest on. And the level of debt, and we talk about Ohio farmers are in a less severe situation than many other farmers across the Midwest. They as a group are carrying less debt than farmers, say, in Iowa or Nebraska at the moment. So we will see that continue, and that's a result of a number of things. The reduced income is what's causing this, and the reduced income is coming from a number of sources. One of those is the lack of expanding foreign markets for grain, and may even be categorized as declining markets.
Why is this?
There are a number of reasons for that grain export market to be declining. The primary reason is probably the worldwide recession that we have come out of in the U.S., but the rest of the world has not come out of yet. They don't have the purchasing power to buy that grain. And the other big reason is the value of the American dollar overseas, which makes everything they want to buy from us much more expensive. And that reduces their demand for the product. And another reason is the fact that basically each government in the world probably has a desire to be self-sufficient in food, so that it is not dependent on someone else for that very basic commodity food. So it's a combination of things that's causing a depressed foreign market, which we geared up to produce for. And now it's not being sold overseas, so we end up having surplus commodities in the U.S. And basic economics says when supply exceeds demand, the price comes down.
In anything.
In anything. And food is no different. And then we have that coupled with some administrative policies out of Washington that says we want American agriculture to be a free market economy. And given the history of American farmers, they will always, and if you look back through time, they will produce themselves out of business. They are such efficient producers, and they have the desire to do what they're doing, that in fact they always end up in producing more than they need.
And they produce quality.
Quality food.
Crop.
It's hard to find better quality food any place in the world, I'm sure. And I'm not a world traveler, but I'm satisfied with what the American farmer produces.
Well, we've traveled quite a bit over the world, and this is true. Are we saying then that this farm economic situation will demand adjusting to in order to survive?
Yes. Major adjustments will have to take place, and the way I would characterize that would be to say that the businessman who wants to be a farmer, or the farmer who decides he must be a businessman to survive, will need to get back to what I call the basics of the economics of a farm business, making sure that that individual farm business is using the labor, the capital, and all of the other inputs very, very efficiently, and making sure that they have a size of business where cost per unit of production is as low as possible. Those will be the things that will allow them to survive over time. Efficient use of labor and capital, high rates of production. We just can't survive anymore with 75 bushel corn land or production, when in fact we have farmers out there that can produce on a regular basis 150 bushels. We can't, the dairy farm that produces, with the Holstein cows, 7,000 or 8,000 pounds of milk per cow per year, just will not survive when the neighbor down the road can sell 20,000 pounds per cow. It's those things, the basic efficiencies, low cost of production, that is going to ensure survival over time.
Is there an answer to that?
Is there an answer to it? The farmers will find the answer. They will generate the answer by changing to the conditions. They will, over time, establish the size of farm that will produce at a low cost and will produce enough profit for them to survive, raise their family, and pay off their loans. But I think one of the changes that they will find that they'll have to make is they will have to borrow less money to do that.
Is this called tightening your belts somewhat?
It's a little more than tightening your belts. There's some major changes that have to go along with that. Tightening your belts simply means, to me anyway, spending less, and that's part of it. But there are other changes that have to take place too.
So I think I hear you saying that what we're facing is change rather than abolishing the farm community. We're just looking at change.
That's basically what's happening. There are changes taking place. People are concerned that farmers are going out of business, we won't have food produced, that there'll be thousands of acres sitting idle that nobody will grow any food on. That won't be the case. The fact is that this adjustment process may in fact provide an opportunity for some young people to get started in agriculture that maybe never could have, because they will be able to get started at a lower price. They will be able to buy the land with some limited equity capital at lower prices, allowing them to become established and get a foothold in the business that they want to do.
And start out perhaps on a lesser scale.
And at a smaller scale. And we will see, I think, changes that are taking place is that we're going to see an increase in the number of small and what you might call part-time farms, and an increase in the large number of farms, and we probably will have a decrease in that middle group of farms the ones that people so often refer to as, quote unquote, the family farm. But it's hard to tell what they're talking about when you don't know what their definition is.
My definition is now that we have to take another break.
Okay.
Would you believe that? We'll be back in just a moment. Stay with us. We're not
When you've tried doing things much like others do, yet your hopes and dreams have not come true, remember, man looks on the outside,
but God looks on the heart.
You are very special, God loves you.
That's so true. God loves you just like you are. He knows your dreams, hopes, and failures. He cares about every area of your life and wants to guide you. I'd like to help you find His guidance by sending you a copy of The Daily Walk. You'll learn how special you really are as it guides you through the Bible. For your free copy, write to Voice of Salvation, Cleveland, Tennessee. Just ask for The Daily Walk, and remember, God loves you.
Could we talk a minute about this hotline? What's the hotline I've been reading about?
The hotline is a toll-free number that the Cooperative Extension Service opened up to farmers in the state of Ohio to call the college and receive some assistance in addressing some basic farm management and financial problems in the farm business. If a farmer wants to avail himself of a team of farm management and farm finance specialists to come out to the farm business, to sit down, to go over the records, go over the business organization, and look at alternatives for solving some problems or to prevent problems from happening, that individual can call that hotline, and a team of people will make an appointment to visit with that farm family about their farm business.
Is there a cost to that?
There's no cost at all to the farmer.
All he has to do is call you and say, I've got a little problem here, I'd like some help.
And basically describe the problem so we can get the right people out there.
Sounds very good. Sounds like a good solution.
Well, it's part of the process of trying to help people adjust to the change that's happening in agriculture.
Thank you so much for being here. Well, I really enjoyed this, and I know you have because we've learned some things, haven't we? Thanks for being with us today. We'll see you next time because we care. God bless.